everyone, welcome to lesson number 7. Today we're just going to continue on with the grand staff and cover a few new items. So looking back at the treble clef, before I just wanted you to learn middle C and treble G, and now we're going to be learning the three notes that lie between them, which are D, E, and F. Your reference notes before were middle C and treble G, and now I want you to add this E as a new reference note, which is always on the bottom staff line in the treble clef. So try and remember these three notes, which, if it helps you remember, are all line notes. You can figure out where D and F are if you can remember these three notes. So let's look at a quick exercise that uses all 5 notes in the C pentascale. Notice how we have a repeat here in the middle of the exercise rather than at the end. And what this means is you're going to play the first 2 measures, then repeat those first 2 measures, and then continue on with the rest of the piece. So this is how this would sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's go to the bass clef. So before we were only looking at bass F and middle C, but now we're going to look at the 3 notes in between those, which are G, A, and B. I want you to use A as your new reference note in the bass clef, which is on the topmost staff line in the bass clef. So if you can remember bass F, A, and middle C, which are all line notes, you can figure out where G and B are. So let's look at an exercise in the bass clef that uses all these notes, which you might notice is just all the notes in the F pentascale, which we've already played with. You can see this exercise has 2 sections that are enclosed by repeat signs here and here. So when you reach the repeat at the end of each line, instead of going back to the beginning of the piece, you'll only go back to the point of the opposite facing repeat sign. So in this exercise, we'll play this whole line first, then repeat only the last 2 measures, then play through the entire next line, and then only repeat the final 2 measures of that line. So this is how this would sound. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the next thing we're going to cover is the rules of stem direction when using the staves. So before I said that anytime you see a stem going up, that meant to play with the right hand, and a stem down meant to play with the left hand. This isn't going to be the case anymore. We only did that before just to make things simpler. So now we're going to have different rules for when a stem is to go up or down when you're drawing on the grand staff. So now, whenever a note is on the middle staff line or above it, the note stem will always be drawn down. If a note is drawn below the middle staff line, the stem will be drawn up. Remember that a note will not change depending on if a stem is drawn up or down. The only reason the stems go up or down is for space and convenience. For example, if this note had its stem drawn up, it would be shooting way above the top of the staff, so instead we draw the stem down to make things fit a little better. Similarly, if this note had its stem drawn down, it would be way down below the staff, so instead we draw the stem going up. So this is true no matter which clef we are in. Whether it's the treble clef or the bass clef, stems go up if the notes are on or above the middle staff line, and they go down if the note is below the middle staff line. So throw out the old rules of having the stems tell you what hand should be playing, because now we should be using the clefs to tell us which hand should be playing. The next thing we're going to cover is something called legato. And legato means to play a series of notes very smoothly without any breaks in the sound. So let's look at a simple exercise. This is how I've been playing a lot of the exercises so far. And you might notice that there's a small amount of dead space between each note as I play. So try and listen for those. We're going to stop playing with these dead spaces in between the notes. Now we're going to play legato. And again, that means we're going to play things very smoothly, so we eliminate all that dead space between notes. So here's how the exercise would sound when played legato, and you'll notice how it's much smoother than before. You should hear how it's very smooth going from note to note. As one finger is coming up from a note, the next finger should already be coming down on the next note. This does take a little bit of practice, so don't worry if it doesn't feel natural right away, but you might have even been playing legato without even realizing it, and if you have, this shouldn't be too much trouble for you. But if you haven't been playing legato, now you really need to be aware of it. The way we show that you should be playing legato is with something called a slur, which look like these. A slur will go over or under the notes that are to be played legato. If the notes to be played legato all have the stems going up, then the slur will always be under the notes, like this. If the notes to be played legato all have stems going down, then the slur should be over the notes, like this. If you have a combination of stems going up and down, then the slur will always go above the notes. You can even show a slur that goes over both the staves, like this. Since this is a combination of up stems and down stems, the slur will go above all the notes. So these are the rules on how to draw your slurs. A slur should only be drawn over notes that can be played legato. For example, this slur appears to show that all these notes should be played legato, but this isn't really correct because right here we have two B notes in a row, and you just simply can't play that part legato since they're the same note, and you can't play the same note twice without having any breaks in the sound. So the correct way to show slurs in this example would be to have one slur here and a second slur here. Here's another exercise where we play legato. Pause the video and look at the slurs and make sure you understand why each slur is either above or below the notes, and understand why we have breaks in the slurs. So this is how this would sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The last thing we're going to cover is essentially the exact opposite of legato, and that is staccato. Staccato is where you tap the keys very quickly without holding them, so there's actually a lot of dead space between the notes. So let's look back at that legato exercise. This is how this would sound again. If we were to make these notes staccato, This is shown by placing dots on the top or bottom of the note heads depending on which way the stem goes. So this is how this exercise would sound when played staccato. The rules for drawing staccato dots are very simple. If the stem goes up, then the dot is on the bottom of the note head. And if the stem goes down, then the dot is above the note head. That's it. Very simple. Before we close up the lesson, I just want to talk a little bit more about legato and staccato. Strictly speaking, a composer should always show their slurs whenever they want you to play legato. However, in reality, I've noticed that a lot of composers seem to leave out the slurs and just assume that you'll be playing everything legato by default unless they show you otherwise. And that's the mindset I take when I'm learning piano music. I'll always assume that something is to be played legato unless it specifically shows that it should be played staccato. Maybe not everyone would agree with me, but I've seen slurs completely left out of music enough times that I just assume that to be the case. I will say that if I ever leave out slurs on anything that I've written for these lessons, just assume that I mean to play it legato, unless I show staccato or something else. Playing legato is one of the most important things to learn. It gives the piano that great flowing sound as you go from note to note, so you need to work on making it feel natural to play legato. That's it for this lesson. This one was maybe a little shorter than the last two lessons, so hopefully that's a bit of a relief. Make sure you go through the worksheet for this lesson, which you can find at thebrokenkey.net. Please email me with any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. See you next time.